Aurelia stood in the throne room, her secret burning like acid in her throat. "I can't give you an heir," she finally whispered to the Vampire King. Peter Mill's ancient eyes gleamed with something that looked almost like amusement. "I already know your secret, Aurelia," he said softly. "And I chose you anyway." She should have been relieved. Instead, terror coiled in her belly. Because if he knew about her damaged hip, her barrenness, what else did he know? And why would the most powerful vampire in the realm deliberately choose a mate who could never continue his bloodline? Before we dive in, I want to hit that subscribe button. The Vampire King has a message for you. The summons came before midnight, a sealed letter pressed into Aurelia's palm by a servant who vanished before she could speak. The Garden Pavilion. Come alone. No signature. None needed. She shouldn't go. Every instinct screamed trap. But 7 years of invisibility had taught her that sometimes the only way forward was through the door everyone warned you not to open. Peter Mill stood with his back to her, moonlight turning his dark hair silver. He didn't turn when she approached, though she knew he'd heard her uneven gait across the stone. The hip always gave her away. "I need a queen," he said, voice cutting through the night. Still not looking at her. "You need a purpose." "I'm offering a political alliance." Aurelia's laugh tasted like copper. "You're joking." "I never joke about survival." Now he turned, and those amber eyes pinned her like a butterfly to cork. "Your answer." "I can't give you an heir." "My body." "I know about your hip." His words fell like stones into still water. "The fall from the tower when you were 18. The healers who said you'd never carry a child." He moved closer, predator slow. "I also know it wasn't an accident." The world tilted. Her sister's hands on her back. The moment of weightlessness before impact. The family's frantic cover story about a stumble, a tragedy. Never speak of it again. "How?" The word barely escaped. "I make it my business to know the secrets of anyone I'm considering binding myself to for eternity." He circled her like she was something fascinating under glass. "That night, your sister pushed you because your father promised you to the Eastern Alpha." She wanted him for herself. Aurelia's nails bit into her palms. "If you know I'm damaged goods, why?" "Because I don't need children." His voice dropped, intimate and terrible. "I need someone intelligent enough to navigate a court of ancient predators. Someone ruthless when necessary. Someone who's learned to survive while the world pretended not to see them." His hand extended between them, pale and steady. "You've been invisible for 7 years. That's exactly the queen I need." "Queen of what?" "A kingdom that's about to tear itself apart." "Yes." No hesitation. "My court is fracturing. 3 rival factions positioning for a coup. Without a bonded mate to stabilize my rule within 6 months, there will be civil war." His eyes held hers. "Thousands will die. Maybe tens of thousands. The last vampire civil war lasted 40 years. Then bond with someone powerful. A vampire lady or... They're the problem." Frustration cracked his composure. "Every noble vampire in my court wants the throne, not the king. You have no faction, no ambition beyond survival. That makes you the only one I can trust." Aurelia stared at his outstretched hand. "Stay here, purposeless, pitted, waiting to fade into irrelevance. Or take the hand of a monster who somehow saw straight through her skin to the person she'd buried 7 years ago." "What does bonding actually entail?" she asked. Peter Mill's smile was slow and dangerous. "That," he said, "is a conversation we'll have after you say yes." The black spire rose from the mountain like a blade thrust into stone. Aurelia's carriage rattled through iron gates that hadn't been oiled in decades, and she understood immediately this wasn't a home. It was a fortress designed to keep things out. Or in. The greeting party waited in the entrance hall, cold as the marble beneath their feet. A tall vampire with silver-streaked hair assessed her like livestock at market. "This is Nathaniel," Peter said. "My second in command." "My lord." Nathaniel's bow was perfunctory. His eyes lingered on her uneven stance. "I hope the journey wasn't too taxing." The pause before taxing said everything. Crippled human. Won't last a month. Only 3 broken wheels and 1 bandit attack, Aurelia replied sweetly. I'm devastated we didn't make it 4. Something flickered in Nathaniel's expression. Not warmth. Reassessment. A woman emerged from the shadows, young-looking, with books clutched to her chest like armor. I'm Iris. Half-vampire, court scholar, professional disappointment to both species. She smiled nervously. I'll show you to your chambers. There, far. Far turned out to be an understatement. Aurelia's rooms occupied the East Tower, an entire wing separating her from Peter's quarters. The message was clear. This marriage is political. Don't expect more. That night, the court dinner felt like being thrown to elegant wolves. Vampire nobility circled, all practiced smiles and poisoned compliments. A visiting Lord Silas, someone whispered, held court at the far end, his voice carrying. Brought in a servant girl yesterday who spilled wine on Lady Cordelia's gown. I had her tongue removed, of course. Teaches the others to be more careful. Laughter rippled through nearby nobles. Peter sat at the head table, expression unreadable. Aurelia's fork clattered against her plate. Interesting. The conversation died. Silas turned, eyebrow raised. I beg your pardon? Just fascinating how you interpret the covenant of service. She kept her voice light, conversational. Section 7, subsection 3 clearly states that physical punishment for accidents requires 3 witnesses to confirm negligence. Did you have 3? Or did you just enjoy the screaming? Silas's face darkened. The girl was protected by law you apparently haven't read. Aurelia smiled. I assume our king will address this violation? Unless vampire nobility is now above the laws they wrote. Every eye turned to Peter. He leaned back, something dangerous playing at the corners of his mouth. Lady Aurelia is correct. Lord Silas, you'll compensate the girl's family and spend the next month reviewing the covenant. Thoroughly. Later, Peter found her on the balcony. He stood 3 feet away, close enough to speak, far enough that they'd never accidentally touch. You're not afraid of them, he said. I'm terrified. The admission came easier in darkness. But I learned something when I was 18, lying at the bottom of that tower. Fear is just information. Showing it only makes predators hungrier. His fingers gripped the railing, white-knuckled. For a moment she thought he'd move closer. Instead, he stepped back. Are your chambers satisfactory? The formal tone stung more than it should. Very far from yours, yes. Good night, Aurelia. She watched him leave, that careful distance maintained like a physical barrier. Was he repulsed? Or was there something else, something in the way his hands shook when he turned away, that she wasn't supposed to see? The locked door should have stopped her. It didn't. Aurelia had spent 3 weeks mapping the Blackspire's corridors, learning which servants knew which secrets, which hinges needed oil. The key to Peter's private study came from a maid who owed her a favor after Aurelia had intervened in a harassment complaint. She expected ledgers, battle plans, maybe correspondence with rival courts. Instead, the room was a shrine to obsession. Medical texts covered every surface: human anatomy, vampire physiology, hybrid complications. Sketches pinned to the walls showed hip joints in brutal detail, annotations in Peter's precise handwriting. Fracture patterns, healing trajectories, weight distribution during pregnancy. Her hip. He'd been studying her hip. A leather journal lay open on the desk. She shouldn't read it. She turned the page anyway. Day 47. Another healer confirms what I already know. The damage is permanent. She'll never carry a child safely. Why does this feel like relief? That's private. Aurelia spun. Peter stood in the doorway, perfectly still in that way vampires had when they were deciding whether to kill you. You've been researching me like I'm a medical experiment. I've been researching how to keep you alive. He moved into the room, each step deliberate. There's a difference. Why? She gestured at the walls. Why does any of this matter if our marriage is political theater? His jaw clenched. My wife, my first queen, 300 years ago, died in childbirth. The words landed like stones. Aurelia's anger faltered. I was different then. Younger. Arrogant. His voice cracked on the last word. She told me she was afraid. That her body wasn't strong enough. I demanded an heir anyway. Pushed her beyond what she could survive because I thought willpower could overcome biology. He turned away, shoulders rigid. I killed her with my ambition. Spent 3 centuries swearing I'd never risk another woman's life for something as meaningless as legacy. Understanding crashed through her. You chose me because I can't have children. I chose you because with you, I'll never be tempted to repeat my worst sin. His reflection stared back from the darkened window. You're safe from me. Something twisted in Aurelia's chest, grief for him, fury at the waste of it. She crossed the room before thinking, reached for his hand. The contact burned. Not metaphorically. Actual heat flared where their skin touched, racing up her arm like lightning through a rod. Peter gasped, eyes going wide and molten gold. Then his mouth was on hers, desperate and hungry, and 3 weeks of careful distance shattering. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious he'd thought lost forever. She melted into him, every nerve singing. He pulled away abruptly, breathing hard, a human tell he shouldn't need. I won't take what I can't give back, he said roughly. What does that mean? But he was already gone, leaving her alone with racing pulse and a question that felt more like a threat. What couldn't he give back? And why did it sound like a confession? Whispers started in the 4th month. Aurelia caught fragments as she passed, still separate chambers, never seen together. He won't even touch her, but she was too busy reshaping Peter's fractured court to care about gossip. She'd spent 3 months learning which nobles could be reasoned with and which needed to be outmaneuvered. The Eastern faction, alienated by Peter's pride, now supported her justice reforms. The Southern houses, bitter over old insults, found she actually listened when they spoke. You're making enemies, Iris warned, watching Aurelia draft new protection laws for human servants. I'm making the right people nervous. Aurelia signed the decree. There's a difference. The corrupt nobles who'd enjoyed unchecked cruelty now feared her. The vulnerable servants, half-bloods, anyone without fangs or power, began seeking her out. She held court every morning, hearing grievances Peter had ignored for decades. And he watched. She felt his gaze during council meetings, felt it when she walked the corridors. Sometimes she'd turn and catch him staring with an expression that made her skin burn. Once, reaching for the same document, their fingers brushed. He jerked back like she'd scalded him. They started talking after midnight, accidentally at first, then deliberately. He'd find her in the library. She'd find him on the battlements. Conversations that stretched until dawn touched the windows, always ending with him retreating before they got too close. Then Silas returned to court. Unfortunate about the queen, his voice carried across the great hall during dinner. Deliberate. Loud. I hear the marriage remains unconsummated. 3 months, isn't it? One wonders if our king has lost his appetite. The hall went silent. Aurelia's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Or perhaps, Silas continued, smile poisonous, he simply cannot perform with damaged goods. A king needs a real wean, not a... Peter moved so fast Aurelia missed it. One moment Silas was smirking. The next, Peter had him pinned against the wall by his throat. Say one more word about my wife, and I'll rip out your tongue. Peter's voice was death itself. She is worth 1,000 of your real queens. I don't deserve her, but I'll be damned if I let you or anyone else take her from me. He released Silas, who crumpled. The court stared. Peter didn't look at Aurelia. Just walked out, leaving chaos behind. She found him 2 hours later, alone in his chambers. Didn't knock. The door swung open to reveal him standing by the window, rigid with tension. You shouldn't be here, he said without turning. You defended me tonight. I stated facts. You said you don't deserve me. She moved closer. Why? Aurelia. 3 months of stolen glances and careful distance. You want me. I know you do. So why won't you? Because I can't give you what you need. He finally turned, anguish cracking his composure. The bond, the real bond it takes. Do you understand? It would take from you, and I won't. What does it take? His silence was an answer and evasion all at once. Tell me, she demanded. No. His hands clenched. Leave, Aurelia. Please. But she was done leaving. Done with distance. Done with cryptic warnings that explained nothing. What are you so afraid of taking from me? I'm tired of your noble suffering, Aurelia said, voice steady despite her racing heart. I'm tired of being protected from you like I'm fragile. I want you. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it. Use small words if you think I'm too simple to comprehend. His control fractured. Peter crossed the distance between them in 2 strides, hands framing her face. I'm trying to save you from me. I don't want to be saved. She grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. I want to be yours. Something broke in his eyes. His mouth crashed against hers, no gentleness, no careful distance, just raw desperate need. She gasped, and he swallowed the sound, lifting her, carrying her to the bed like she weighed nothing. Their clothes disappeared between frantic kisses. His hands mapped her body with reverence and hunger, lingering on her damaged hip like it was sacred instead of ruined. When he finally entered her, she understood why he'd fought this. The bond snapped open between them like a door torn off hinges, pleasure so intense it bordered on pain. She felt him in her veins, his centuries of loneliness, his guilt, his desperate love. And he felt her, every scar, every survival, every moment she'd chosen to keep breathing. Afterward, tangled in sheets and each other, reality crept back. The mate bond for vampires is permanent, Peter said quietly, staring at the ceiling. But it's also parasitic. Aurelia's contentment chilled. What? Over time, I'll unconsciously drain your life force. Not your blood, your years. His voice cracked. You'll age faster. Die younger. I've been fighting it, trying not to complete the bond fully, but tonight. How much younger? Decades. Maybe half your natural lifespan. He finally looked at her. I've already started taking from you. Right now. I can feel it. The room spun. Aurelia sat up, processing. That's why you chose someone who was already damaged? Someone whose life was already considered half-lived. His silence confirmed everything. Rage flooded through her, not at the curse, but at the calculation. You arrogant fool. Aurelia. You don't get to decide what my life is worth. She stood, pacing despite the uneven gait. 7 years ago, I was pushed from a tower and survived. Every day since has been borrowed time that everyone, my family, my pack, society, told me was worthless. And you thought, what? That taking half of nothing still equals nothing. I thought you deserved more than slowly dying for someone like me. I deserved a choice. Her voice broke. You made this decision months ago. Before you even met me. You calculated my worth down to the year and decided I was acceptable collateral damage. No. Yes. She grabbed her clothes. You chose me because you thought my damaged life mattered less. That's the truth you've been hiding. Peter reached for her, and she flinched away. The hurt in his eyes nearly broke her resolve. I need time, she whispered. How much time? She didn't answer. Couldn't. Because the worst part was understanding why he'd done it, and hating that it almost made sense. The library held answers Peter had never wanted her to find. Aurelia spent 3 sleepless nights buried in texts about vampire bonds, cross-referencing symptoms, comparing cases. The pattern emerged like stars through clearing clouds. The bond only drains life when it's unequal. If both partners were vampire, the exchange balanced. Immortal feeding immortal. No loss. No slow death. She found Peter in his study at dawn. Turn me, she said without preamble. His quill stopped mid-stroke. No. The bond drains me because I'm human. Make me vampire and I won't trap you in this existence. He stood, face carved from stone. Immortality isn't a gift, Aurelia. It's watching everyone you love die while you continue. I won't curse you with that. So you'd rather I die in 30 years instead of 300? I'd rather you have a choice. His voice cracked. A real one. Not one forced by my selfishness. She studied him, this man who'd rather lose her than risk her hating him later. Noble. Infuriating. Fine, she said quietly. That night, she ground sleeproot into his wine. Watched him drain the glass, watched his eyes grow heavy. Vampires could resist most poisons, but sleeproot worked on exhaustion, and Peter hadn't truly rested in weeks. Aurelia. He swayed. What did you? She caught him as he fell, lowered him carefully to the bed. Pressed a kiss to his forehead. I'm sorry, she whispered. But I'm choosing myself this time. The neutral territory took 2 days to reach. The vampire enclave another half-day. She found them in a converted monastery, vampires who turned willing humans for a price. I need to be turned, she told the woman who answered. Tonight. The woman, ancient, elegant, utterly disinterested, gestured to a chair. Payment first. Aurelia reached for her purse when the door exploded inward. Peter stood in the wreckage, eyes wild, chest heaving with unnecessary breaths. Stop. How did you? You think I wouldn't feel you leave? His voice broke. That I wouldn't wake the moment you were too far away? He crossed the room, ignoring the other vampires. Don't do this. Not for me. It's not for you, you insufferable man. Aurelia stood, fury and relief warring in her chest. It's for me. I finally found someone I want to fight for. Something I want to spend lifetimes with. And you're trying to take that away because you've decided I'm too broken to choose for myself. I'm trying to protect. I don't need protection. The words ripped from her throat. I spent 7 years being told what I couldn't do, couldn't be, couldn't have. My family decided I was worthless. Society decided I was damaged. And now you've decided my choices don't matter because you know better. She stepped closer, voice dropping to something dangerous. Either turn me yourself, or I'll let a stranger do it. But I'm not losing you. I'm not losing this. Not without a fight. Peter stared at her like she'd struck him. You'd hate me eventually. For trapping you. I'll hate you now if you don't let me choose. His hands shook. She watched him fracture, protective instinct against her autonomy, his guilt against her choice. Please, she whispered. Let me decide what my eternity looks like. Peter's surrender came quietly. If this is what you want. The door slammed open. Iris stumbled in, books spilling from her arms, breathless and wild-eyed. Wait, she gasped. Don't turn her. Please, I found something. Peter froze. Iris, this isn't. The bond doesn't drain life. The words tumbled out frantically. I've been researching since you told me about the parasitic effect. It doesn't take its shares. Equally. Aurelia's heart stopped. What? For healthy humans, sharing life force with an immortal means aging slightly faster. Decades, maybe. But for someone already damaged, Iris looked directly at Aurelia. The bond heals. It doesn't know the difference between maintaining and repairing. It just balances the life force between both partners. Peter went absolutely still. That's impossible. Your first queen wasn't killed by the bond. Iris's voice gentled. The texts are clear. She died from childbirth complications that existed before you bonded. You've spent 3 centuries blaming the wrong thing. The monastery fell silent. Aurelia watched understanding and horror dawn on Peter's face. I researched symptoms, he whispered. Matched them to accounts of other bonded pairs. I never questioned whether the bond itself. His eyes met Aurelia's. I assumed. God, I assumed because I was so certain I'd killed her. Test it, Aurelia said. Complete the bond. Properly. Right now. If I'm wrong, then I'll turn vampire like I planned. She took his shaking hands. But if Iris is right, then you've wasted months keeping us apart over guilt instead of truth. Peter pulled her close, his forehead pressed to hers. When he kissed her this time, something unlocked. The bond that had been straining against his restraint finally allowed to flow freely. Heat flooded Aurelia's body. Not painful. Not draining. Repairing. She gasped as warmth concentrated in her damaged hip, Peter's immortal vitality flowing into the broken places. The constant ache that had defined 7 years began to ease. Not instantly, but genuinely. Your secret, Peter whispered against her hair, was never that you were broken. It was that you were always meant to be whole. You just needed someone to share the burden. 3 years later, Aurelia walked through the Blackspire's gardens without pain. The limp was gone. Her body, restored by the bond, moved with grace she'd thought lost forever. Peter found her by the roses, that familiar hunger in his eyes that had nothing to do with blood and everything to do with love. I have something to tell you, she said, taking his hand and placing it on her stomach, on the slight curve that hadn't been there last month. His eyes went wide. Impossible. The healers were wrong. She smiled. Or maybe the bond made what was impossible, possible. Peter dropped to his knees, pressing his forehead to her belly. Centuries of loneliness finally ended. Their child, half vampire, half human, fully a miracle, proof that sometimes the things that should break us are exactly what make us whole. Sometimes being broken is just the beginning of becoming something stronger. If you loved this story of finding wholeness in unexpected places, subscribe for more tales where the damaged become powerful, the broken become beautiful, and love rewrites every rule. Because your story isn't over, it's just getting started.